Shemai Croeso, another episode of Blueprint Cymru. Today, I'm joined by fellow founder of New Wales. So I enjoyed the First Minister's questions today.
It was fun, wasn't it?
Some moronic questions.
Yeah, there's a really interesting dynamic in there around First Minister's questions, I felt. The obvious one that there are plenty of people on Reform's front benches and back benches who it seems are not quite up to the task and who are intent on being performative without actually doing anything. I don't know if you picked up on that at all.
I did. I didn't actually see the whole of the First Minister's questions, but I saw the Reform questions on agriculture, and I think it was Conservatives were asking about the M4 bypass. So it seemed very standard.
Yeah, the Conservatives are interesting though.
Finding their feet.
Well, there's a little bit of that. I mean, certainly, you could tell that, if Rhun ap Iorwerth is his first, you could tell that he was finding his feet. You could tell that everyone was, discovering their way into it. But even their early indications, the Tories I find really interesting because there's such a wide mix and they clearly don't coordinate or make any effort to work together. And you've got Andrew Arty-Davies out on the performative Reform end of the spectrum, Darren Millar somewhere in the middle, but also I feel occasionally asks questions that are questions he feels he should ask rather than good questions to ask if you're scrutinizing a government.
Yeah, I don't think Darren Millar seems very comfortable with himself at the moment. He seems like he's performing to something he isn't. Yeah,
I agree. That's exactly it. And then you've got Peter and Paul, haven't you? Peter Fox and Paul Davies, who are much more interested, it would seem to me, in being collaborative and doing the job that they're there to do. And they're obviously all in the same party. So, and it's a tiny party. There's only 7 of them. So it can't be. I wouldn't be surprised to see at some point, certainly in this Senedd term, Darren Millar no longer being the named leader of the Conservative group in the Senedd. But we shall have to wait and see. But I tell you what, Senedd FMQ, Senedd.tv, for anybody listening, Senedd.tv on a Tuesday afternoon, with a Welsh language feed or an English language feed, it's up to you, just tune into the right one. And often live on the BBC app as well, is compulsive viewing. No one needs to just keep watching it for a few weeks and people will get to understand the currents, the soap opera that underlies everything that happens on that screen.
Absolutely, and I'm waiting bated breath to hear some of the New Wales policy ideas in there from somebody when they've read our manifesto on our website.
Yeah. Well, that's just a matter of time, isn't it, until we make enough noise that someone picks up and hopefully gives us a credit and a nod, but possibly won't. But let's hope so.
And then I see that Mark Drayford, at least, has reported on BBC Wales that Mark Drayford is backing Andy Burnham. He says he should be next Prime Minister. I don't even see that.
Do you know, that's actually quite surprised me. Mark Drakeford has come out and he's come out quite strongly to tell Starmer that Starmer should set a timetable and just move on. And I suppose maybe it's partly that Mark Drakeford is a process guy and he feels there should be a process. I don't know. But I was quite surprised to see Mark Drakeford essentially stepping in and interfering in a Westminster problem.
Well, yeah, especially with all the years of it being the other way around.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we've sort of drifted straight into FMQs, which I know is very topical, and the stuff.
We have. I'm gonna. Which would be rubbish for people that are watching this on video. It might be entertaining, but I'm gonna search around because I've got a private eye here, which there was something in there that would exercise me, and I thought we could discuss. So, it's to do with. Here we go. There's another train thing. So. It's to do with the Transport for Wales and the Great Western Railways, and Transport for Wales wanting to run services Cardiff to Bristol. And particularly, and I actually think that Private Eye is probably one of the best and most reliable media sources in the country. It says, well, pretty much the story that we've always have with Wales. Of the Treasury says, no, it's our money.
Pretty much, yeah. We're not going to let that Transport for Wales chaps make any money out of this.
So given
better at it than the people who are there, and that means the money will be going than to us. So we're not.
And I suppose exactly. So Transport for Wales is nationalised and subsidised by the Welsh government. So anything that it does make goes into Welsh coffers, and obviously Great Western Railways is now owned by UK government. So they're saying, hands off our cash.
Yeah.
Which I read that and thought, well, that's made me angry, but at the same time, same old story, isn't it?
It is the same old story, but it's also classic one rule for them and another rule for you, which happens to Wales a lot, and in the railway context, obviously, HS2 and the way that's been categorised, and how Scotland and Northern Ireland make loads of money out of it. Even more, because apparently it's going to cost 102 billion now, and it won't be delivered until 2039. And it's going to cost 102 billion, even though it's been severely curtailed and they're slowing the trains down. So it's going to be not so fast 2 rather than high speed 2. And with all of that, that is comfortably, it is now comfortably more than 5 billion that should have come or should be coming to Wales in its entirety by 2039. Because none of that includes, that's just HS2. It doesn't include all the other railway investment funding across the era of devolved government that hasn't been apportioned to Wales, which probably amounts to yet another 5 billion. So you're quite comfortably looking at getting close to 10 billion pounds that Wales just hasn't had because of quirks of Treasury classification.
Which would be pretty tidy if the Senedd ended up with that. It could do a bit with that.
Well, I mean, just the fact that it hasn't been done and they're still resisting it, it should make every single person in Wales incredibly angry. It should make people like the Secretary of State for Wales incredibly angry. It should make all the Welsh MPs incredibly angry. It should make every single member of that Senedd who are sitting there today, whether they're Reform or Conservative or Green or the party of Jane Dodds or Plaid Cymru, all of them should be fuming. They should be fuming about this. But there isn't enough anger there. There isn't enough anger at all. What is it? Isn't that the title of Will Hayward's book? Isn't it Why Everyone Should Be Really Bloody Angry in Wales? Isn't that his title? Something like that?
More or less.
And he's absolutely right.
I think his subtitles is why the Welsh should be angry.
Yeah, I've not read the book yet, but he's absolutely right that we should all be bloody angry. And I'm surprised that we're not. Well, we've drifted way off track, Simon. And for once, I'm going to bring you back on track instead of you bringing me back on track. Let's talk about the election result.
Yes, well, that's only because you did so well with your predictions, Gwern. So we're gonna blow some smoke up your backside a bit and say, well done, Gwern.
Thank you. I'm actually quite pleased that I didn't get more of it right, because it would be a little bit daunting if I'd called the Greens and they delivered, and they didn't. So the Greens saved me from.
But I think the Greens were successfully squeezed by Plaid Cymru, and they obviously ran a very good squeeze campaign on the Greens and made it about them or Reform.
Yes, I agree, and also the Greens suffered from not having the party infrastructure across Wales, because they're, in essence, they're a relatively new kid on the block, and they just hadn't had time to turn all of those new members that they have, huge numbers of new members. They're probably not far off Plaid Cymru in terms of membership in Wales now, but they just hadn't had the time to turn that membership into a well-oiled campaigning machine. And I do have to say there is a hat tip here to Plaid Cymru, because they did run a really good campaign. And they really lifted their game at street level and, at grassroots level. And that really showed for them, I think, in lots of ways. So
yes, well, as a former campaign lead for the Liberal Democrats and the former candidate for the Liberal Democrats, I know a little bit about campaigning. And from what I saw from the outside, I have to say, I think Plaid Cymru definitely ran the best campaign for many reasons. which I guess leads me to maybe we should have a little chat about, as you said, the Jane Dodds party, and where they're going to go, if they're going to go anywhere in the future, what they're going to do, how they're going to get any questions asked at First Minister's questions. What's the point of them in there, you know?
Well, it's an excellent question. I mean, if the questions are just going to be Jane Dodds talking about social care, which is her own personal issue, which is very close to her own sort of beliefs, personal beliefs, and being very vocal and vociferous with a no to independence message, then they do seem to be a bit pointless. I mean, there is no real purpose, but also there's no real voice. One member in a 96-seat chamber is, you know, that's no voice. So what are they going to do? I mean, the noises I hear, I don't think that they understand. You know, when they're looking at what happened, I don't think they understand the extent to which they've been pushed out of the electoral calculus here in Wales. I don't think they get that. And until they understand why they've lost all support, they're never going to be able to address it. And I certainly don't get any feeling that they're going to radically change what they have to offer or what they stand for. So, you know, the word I think we're looking for is that they are totally screwed.
Yes, and I know that Ed Davies and the party in London have got some legal issues at the moment, which probably won't go into, although it's in the private eye. Mind you, the private eye is often sued, so I won't. I don't want to follow after it in that respect. But yeah, it does seem, and Mark Pack, who's the guy that strategizes and did bring the Liberal Democrats a lot of success in the 2024 general election. I hear from those that are still more closely involved with the Liberal Democrats in Wales, he's going to be brought in to analyse. But you know, at the core of it, it's
itself is tone deaf, isn't it? But that in itself is tone deaf. You know, you don't bring a senior honcho from England who understands English politics and has engineered some success in an English context. You don't bring that person in to analyse a context which he doesn't really understand. You know, there's no way, it doesn't matter how much research he does, there's no way, having not, you know, without living and breathing the context here in Wales, he's not going to understand the political landscape that he's reviewing into. So how is he going to deliver a solution for the Welsh Liberal Democrats without actually understanding what's brought them to where they are?
Which is, you know, it speaks to a wider topic, which I guess is the theme that hopefully everybody's starting to understand and wake up and maybe take some action on, is that until things, wherever you fall on the political spectrum, until things are in the hands of people in Wales, nothing's going to happen for the Welsh people. And I think with, you know, with, they say, with Mark Pack coming in, he's well, it speaks to a lot of the parties, isn't it, that they don't spend the time, because the Liberal Democrats haven't just failed in these national elections in Wales, they have in Scotland as well. And it looks like it is now just a party of more or less south and southwest of England. And it's another aspect that the general media don't seem to be talking about, because they never really talk about the Liberal Democrats, but it's part of that change in the way that people are viewing politics and reacting to politics.
Yeah, I agree, and it is creating then a geographic split, isn't it? Which will be very interesting. And there's a danger here for other parties. There's a danger for the Greens that they become a very urban party, because you know, in the next general election, the Greens will probably do fairly well, and the seats that they can win will probably all be in urban areas, mirroring again their result in Wales, where they got 2 seats in Cardiff, which is great, because, you know, we have the dynamic duo of Rock and Slaughter now. I love it. Or Slaughter and Rock. Maybe it should be Slaughter and Rock. I don't know. It does sound like a sort of really cheesy 60s US cop show.
Or a Will Ferrell film.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Will Ferrell as Anthony Slaughter. That'd be brilliant. I hope he's listening. So you know, those dynamics won't change. I think there are things that are going to change. You know, let's future cast a little bit, and let's just move temporarily out of Wales because there's so much stuff happening at a UK level, and let's look at Burnham and the Macclesfield by-election, and let's assume, as I think is likely, that he wins that quite comfortably. Now, there are a couple of things to take from that. One, he will have shown that he can see off the reform threat. Two, he will have shown that he can see off the reform threat with a very different message to Starmerism, and with very clear distance between what he's saying and what reform say. And very much, you know, in some senses, parking on the lawn of the Greens in ways that Starmer just has failed to do. So we've got Burnham then going off to Westminster. Almost certainly, you know, he's then going to turf Starmer out, whether there's a timetable or not. Wes Streeting is playing quite a canny political game, I think, at the moment, because he's making sure he's visible. He will be the only challenger. He won't win, but he will be prominent. And in this era of rapidly changing PMs, he's positioning himself for potentially being a future PM. So I've actually been, you know, babyface Wes. I've been quite impressed with the way he's handled this and the pressure he's put Burnham under quite cleverly, and some of the pressures that are then sort of rolling on from that to put Zach under. But the important thing from a Welsh context about this, and that's what we really care about, is we future cast Burnham into being the PM at Westminster, not the PM in Cardiff Bay. We've got our own of those. But Burnham will be the most pro-devolution Prime Minister the UK has ever had. And he will be explicitly pro-devolution. He is a firm believer that government should be as close to the people being governed as possible. And he isn't just a tokenistic lip service believer in the way that Tony Blair was. You know, he is a lived experience.
Well, I was going to say, is this come out of his experiences of being Manchester's mayor, or is, as I don't remember him being particularly on side with devolution when he was part of the Blair government.
But he grew up in that government where devolution happened, and he was a real child then. So yeah. You know, he's grown up through that, and now he's been a Metro mayor. So it's shaped him, hasn't it? It has shaped him, and he's, you know, he's quite open about it when he talks about it. How pro devolution he is. So that's going to create a very different dynamic at probably the right time. And I know it sounds counterintuitive, but the more that Westminster gives at this stage to Scotland and Wales, the more likely they are to actually keep the union going. Because denying things when you've got pro-separatism, pro-independence, I just thought I'd slip in a little bit of Andrew Artie Davies there. Separatists!
It's in Canada. In Canada, it's thrown at Parti Québécois all the time. Well, you're separatists, as though it's a bad thing.
Yeah, well, exactly. So, but these pro-indie parties, you know, if you just fight them, if you go back to the muscular unionism, all you're going to do is feed support for independence, because you're going to create yourself as the boogie monster, and you know those nations can blame everything on you. Whereas if you start to give control, and then the SNP screw it up, or Plaid Cymru screw it up, you know, Labour in Westminster and Andy Burnham can say, well, look, we gave you everything you wanted. We've given you the Crown Estates. We've given you tax-raising powers. We've given you more fiscal independence. We've given you, or in the process of giving you, policing and justice. You know, we've given you everything. And we've even given you some tokenistic part of the HS2 money. We're not going to give it to you all because £10 billion, no way, mate. That's a bit much. But we've given you some. You know, so you know, all of a sudden, there's two things then that will happen in 2030. The Labour Party in Wales, if they play their cards right and play the Welsh Labour thing and go back to being Rodri Morgan's party, then they've got a much, much better electoral chance. And the calculation is, you know, Labour will do better. Plaid Cymru will still do really well because they got everything. And your populist naysayers and doommongers will probably have had the rug pulled out from underneath them and will disappear.
And one of the other things, well, I was gonna maybe come back on that a little bit because one of the other things that Andy Burnham says he's a convert to is proportional voting. Now, I think that would be obviously very healthy for the whole of the United Kingdom, but will that, in your looking into your crystal ball there, is this, would that not allow all the parties to be able to continue? Will that not save a lot of these parties that currently look like they're disappearing?
So that's a good question. In places where proportional representation has been around a lot longer, parties wax and wane and sometimes do disappear. And you know, but what happens more often is the parties reinvent themselves, and they reinvent themselves quite radically and quite quickly. Or you get, so Hungary is a great example, isn't it? Someone from Fidesz left Fidesz, and within 2 years, having joined a small party that already existed and transformed it, turned that into the party of government with a massive majority. And you know, and that was in a system that was loaded against them, really, because of the way Orban had played around with the constitution and the electoral system. And you see it, you know, the other obvious example from Europe, which people might have are more likely to have heard of than the smaller ones, is En Marche, when Macron came along, and in the space of 9 months, he wasn't even on the polling, and in 9 months he was president as the leader of En Marche. So you know, we might want to brace ourselves for more volatility in that sense, but at the same time, we can also look forward to a space and a place where parties can't just stand still and do the same, and that's the way we've always done it. And yeah, we can keep doing that, and we can have these little pots of patronage, because proportional representation is not going to allow for that. It just won't happen. I think the Labour Party is in favour of proportional representation on the whole. It's you know they've got a long road ahead of them for people to understand the implications of that.
Well, I think they might start realising it favours them as the landscape's changing.
Yeah, I think everybody's starting to understand that first past the post is no longer fit for purpose in a 5-party system, which is the Westminster model. I mean, we nominally have a 6-party system if you include the party of Jane Dodds, but really, you know, we've got a 5-party system as well at the moment.
So as we draw ourselves to a close here in this conversation, I did want to touch on the diaspora, and because things were said before the election that were Plaid Cymru to win the government, that they would be doing more to engage with the diaspora. I haven't yet seen, I know it's a very, very early days, but I haven't yet seen any plans for that. And I was wondering what your thoughts were with whether that will happen, and how they might go about with that, achieving that.
Well, I think you're right. It's too early to tell. I mean, they've got their 100-day plan, and they've got to crack on with that. They have some huge challenges ahead of them. The things I have picked up on, language has changed already. You know, emphasis has changed. I think it was is it Heledd Vychan, who's the Minister for Arts and Culture. She's been quite clear that, you know, there's going to be year-on-year increases and in funding for arts and culture, even if that involves reallocation of health spending to use in preventative ways. And it is shown that spending on arts and culture and sport can be preventative. So that's going to be quite interesting to see how they do that, and how much they do that. Is it just going to be tinkering? You know, 10%?
Yeah, I was quite impressed that they came out of the gates, you know, using that in an argument to tackle mental health issues and so forth.
Yeah, and you know, she was quite clear as well that it's a disgrace that Wales is on the bottom of the league tables in per head spending across Europe. You know, we really are. I think I think Iceland, who are on the top, spend 3.5 times as much as Wales do.
Yeah, I'd seen some graphs on that as well. I think it was something phenomenal per person, like thousands of euros compared to like 50 quid. Something in Wales.
Yeah, and you know, it is in defiance of of research, and it is, and given the nature of the demographic of the population in Wales, older, sicker than the average across the UK, which is a really strong argument for fairer funding, incidentally, which I really hope that Plaid Cymru will be able to push much harder. But given that demographic profile, you know, it's even more absurd to not be spending more money on things that are proven to improve those things, and to be of benefit to an older, sicker population, disproportionately of benefit to an older, sicker population. So, you know, spend the money. And it is, you know, in overall Welsh budget terms, it is pocket change.
Absolutely.
It genuinely is.
Now, we at New Wales are after your money. So if you're listening, and
I was wondering if you were going to ask for money at the end of the pod.
We've got lots of great things we're going to do. We've got some work on ideas, particularly around building the economy. We've started to grow our base of people involved with New Wales. We've got some great people that have come from, or hopefully will be coming over from business to help us. So if you do want to give us some money, you can go to the New Wales website, which is new.wales, and there's easy found donation form on there. Sign up and look at our very radical and thought-provoking manifesto we put forward. It's not a traditional party-style manifesto. It's really meant to get the little grey cells thinking, and hopefully people will come back to us and tell us where we're wrong or where we're right.
Absolutely. Bring on the challenge, isn't it? We want the lively debate and the discussion. And tune in next week when Ina will be joining us.
For diolch yn fawr, Gwen.
Diolch yn fawr. Diolch o galon.